All right, guys, welcome back, everyone. Happy to be back after another break of making videos. Kind of got busy with some stuff and with work, etc. But as you can see, the today we're covering the final part of Aegon's conquest: the Kneeling Man, Conquest of the Vale, Unbent Dorne, and the Oldtown Coronation. So, as you can see, guys, I wanted to shout this out real quick. I got a new Targaryen winter hat and a new Winter is Coming sweatshirt. So that is fun. And that'll be appropriate because in the first part of this video, we will be discussing um, the North versus the Targaryens. With that all being said, guys, there are 3 videos to this you can find. So this is the part 4 on my channel if you want. It'll probably take you less than 45 minutes to watch all of it. And I do think, not to brag, but I do think I did a pretty good job with just summarizing this. I tried to just keep to the facts. I gave you some fan theories, my theories, and just some other generic fun facts. But definitely check those other 3 videos out if you get a chance. Again, this is the final part. And after this video series, I plan on doing a video on the first Blackfire Rebellion and a series on the Duncan Egg novellas, which takes place 200 years after the conquest, so 100 years before Game of Thrones. And I'm doing this, guys, since the show A Night of the Seven Kingdoms will be premiering in a few months, late spring, early summer. That show will be about a guy named Sir Duncan the Tall and a young Targaryen prince named Egg. Anyways, guys, please like and subscribe to the channel, and let's get into the content for today. All right, everyone. Before I start, also, I got a harp for today's beer. I do recommend harp. I think it's like the light Guinness. But anyways, let's get into the actual content. So the first part, everyone, the Kneeling Man, Part 1, Torrhen Stark and the Northermen cross the neck. So remember at this time when Torrhen Stark crosses the neck into the Riverlands, Aegon is all the way in the south near Highgarden, which is pretty far away from where the Trident is, where you can see labeled on the map. So Aegon has to fly on Balerion and rally his troops northward. Aegon actually wanted to continue south to see the submission of Oldtown, the Arbor, and Dorne. However, his plans had to change due to the large northern army marching south into Aegon's newly gained domain of the Riverlands. When Torrhen finally reaches the Trident, he sees a military about 15,000 strong facing him south of the Trident. He also witnesses 3 dragons flying overhead, of course, Balerion, Vhagar, and Meraxes. With that, Torrhen has to make a choice. He had heard about the Field of Fire and what happened at Harrenhal. Some of his bannermen suggested fighting and that their northern valor would be able to defeat the Dragon Lords. Other bannermen insisted he move back north and make his stance on northern ground at Moat Cailin. Moat Cailin is just north of the Twins, basically, as you can see on the map. It's not labeled on the map, but it's in the pretty far southern part of the north. Torrhen's bastard brother, Brandon Snow, offered to cross the Trident alone under the cover of darkness to slay the dragons while they slept. You may ask, how would Brandon Snow do this? I'm not going to get into super detail, guys, but there's a lot of fan theories about this. Some theorize that he had some form of dragon glass or even some old god's magic of some form that could kill the dragons. However, this is all speculation, and in the end, this is not what Torrhen even decides on. But in the next section, we'll be covering what ultimately happens to Torrhen and the North. All right, guys, the Kneeling Man Part 2, Torrhen and the Northernmen submit to Aegon. So no one knows exactly why Torrhen knelt to Aegon. He sent his bastard brother to parley with the Targaryens, and my belief, as well as many others believe, that the reason he knelt was Aegon told Brandon, who then told Torrhen, about the Long Night and the coming of the White Walkers. We also now know from House of the Dragon that Aegon did have a dream of White Walkers, and this has been confirmed by George, and that is why he came to Westeros to conquer it. Now, if it were any other kingdom, they may not have believed him. But for centuries upon centuries in the North, they've been telling stories of the White Walkers, like you see Old Nan in Game of Thrones, actually. And the first Long Night, which happened about 8,000 years prior. That's actually why the wall was built by Brandon the Builder 8,000 years prior to the conquest. So Torrhen, knowing that the Long Night would come back again, knew that he and Westeros would need a Targaryen in charge, and dragons besides them to ultimately defeat the evil winter zombie things. Torrin was not looked very kindly upon in the Northern histories because Northerners are not known for kneeling. However, he saved 30,000 Northerners from another field of fire and made a pact. You could argue this is the original pact of ice and fire, even before Jason Cregan during the dance, that would last until, of course, right before a Game of Thrones during Robert's Rebellion. So the irony is, which I always think is funny, that Torrin actually, I mean, I think this actually had to happen for Jon Snow to be born, but anyways, just going a little bit of a tangent. The irony is that Torrin made this pact with Aegon because he thought like a Targaryen needed to be in charge of the dragons, but we all know uh, there's no dragons at the time of Game of Thrones. Well, there are with Dany, but before Game of Thrones starts, there's no dragons, and there's not even a Targaryen in charge because the Mad King kind of ruined all of that. But anyways, Torrin kneels to Aegon, and now the North is part of the Targaryen domains. But with that being said, the North is conquered. Let's move to the Vale. The conquest of the Vale. Visenya and Vhagar force the Vale to bend the knee. Before I start this, I have to say, I don't know if George did this alliteration intentionally. I highly doubt it, but Visenya, Vhagar, and the Vale, I mean, come on now. That's just kind of fun, guys. Anyways, alliteration's fun. So after Torrin kneels to Aegon, Aegon heads south to Oldtown to make them bend some knees. Rhaenys heads to Dorne, and Meraxes and Visenya, excuse me, and Visenya heads east to the Vale of Arryn. So again, Rhaenys is heading south to Dorne, uh, Aegon's heading southwest to Oldtown, and Visenya is heading east to the Vale. Shara Arryn is the current ruler of the Vale. She is the regent for her son Ronald Arryn, who is just a young boy at this time. Also, a fun fact for you guys: has anyone else ever noticed that during any serious times or war during a Song of Ice and Fire, there always seems to be a woman ruling the Vale? Shara during the Conquest, Jane during the Dance of Dragons, and Lysa during the War of the Five Kings. And besides that, Rhaenyra Targaryen, who eventually becomes queen, is a quarter of Arryn on her mom's side. Her grandfather was an Arryn. I'm not sure what the symbolism is there exactly, but it's something to definitely think about. But anyways, she is one of the last kingdoms that has not been conquered, which makes sense because the Val and the Eyrie are very hard to invade and conquer due to them being buried in high mountains. I always think about that Tyrion and Bronn quote from Game of Thrones season one, where Bronn tells Tyrion, like, Tyrion basically says, "Oh, the Val is like impregnable," and then basically Bronn's like, uh, "Give me a few good men and some climbing tools, and I'll impregnate the." Well, I don't want to swear, but anyways, uh, however, in this scenario, the Targaryens don't need a few good men like Bronn because they have Visenya and Vhagar. After Visenya descends into the inner courtyard with Vhagar, Shara knows it is over. Visenya has her son in her lap with Vhagar right behind the both of them. Boy King, being young and ignorant, has no idea the threat of what is going on and asks his mother if he can go for a ride with Vhagar. Visenya grants his wish. When the boy comes down to the ground, he is no longer a king, but the Warden of the East and the Lord of the Vale. Nice solo win for Vhagar and Visenya right there. Good job not burning and killing anyone, Vhagar. But essentially, that is the conquest of the Val. So the conquest of the Val and the conquest of the North are easy. Basically, no one dies because Torrens just bends the knee because most likely he knows that the Long Night's coming and he needs to side with the Targaryens and their dragons. And Shar Aaron just, that's a bit of a tongue twister, just basically gives up because her son would be burned alive by Vhagar if not, and Vhagar would just burn the entire Val anyways, so no one dies in either of those conquests, which is kind of interesting. But anyways, the next section, guys, we're going to look at Rhaenys going south towards Dorne, so we're going to see what happens there. All right, guys. Unbowed, Unbent, and Unbroken, Part 1. Rhaenys finds deserted castles and towns in Dorne. So Rhaenys flies to Dorne. She sees there are guards defending the Prince's Pass, the gateway through the Red Mountains. It is the only way by land, basically to Dorne. There's another way, but it's even more brutal, the Bone Way, which you can see to the right, but that's not important. Also, the Prince's Pass, guys, fun fact, is where Jon Snow, at least in the show, was born because that is where the Tower of Joy is. Probably some other symbolism there, but that is called the Prince's Pass, and Jon Snow will most likely be the prince that was promised in the books. Also, quick side note, guys, the Red Mountains and the gateways to Dorne, such as Starfall, the Tower of Joy, Blackhaven, Night Song, etc., are, in my opinion, very magical places within Westeros. That theory or idea would probably would definitely take a whole nother video, but essentially, guys, I have a theory that there are certain places in Westeros where magic is more powerful. Um, I kind of want to explore that theory more and understand why, but there are definitely some places in Westeros where magic seems to be more powerful, such as the Gateway to Dorne, Harrenhal and the Isle of Faces, Oldtown, Dragonstone, the Neck, Winterfell, and of course the Wall. But Rhaenys can't seem to find any armies, soldiers, or lords. She has no idea what is going on. Every castle she goes to, she finds it abandoned. And in the next section, we will discuss her arrival to the capital of Dorne, the home of the Martells, Sunspear. So let's get into it. All right, guys. Unbowed, Unbent, and Unbroken Part 2. The failed conquest of Dorne. Yeah, they didn't conquer every single part of Westeros. So Dorne is unique in many ways, guys. One being, they do not call their liege lord a lord or a king, etc. They refer to them as a prince or princess. This comes from the age of Nymeria, 400 years prior to the conquest, so about 700 years prior to the start of Game of Thrones. Nymeria brought her people over from the invading Valyrians over in Essos when the Valyrian Empire was very strong, and settled in Dorne and married into the Martell family. The family's formal name is actually Nymerius Martell. Additionally, Dorne cares less about gender than the other kingdoms. If a female is born first, they will assume the seat of Dorne, not the male. Again, this stems from Nymeria being a woman, so they just care less about gender than the other kingdoms because of that. Because their first, like, not their first ruler, but like their probably arguably most powerful ruler was a woman. But Dorne is also unique because they did not get conquered by Aegon. Some of this most likely stems, again, from their ancestors, again, Nymeria, being able to fight off the dragons with their water magic. But in this case, in this time, they just use guerrilla tactics like the Vietnamese did in the Vietnam War. They just hid, basically. The Martell words are unbowed, unbent, and unbroken, and today they were that. After Aegon is coronated, they continue to invade and try to conquer Dorne, but they have no success. In fact, in 10 AC, Rhaenys dies with Meraxes at Hellholt, which is a pretty big town and castle in Dorne, from a large bone arrow, which we see in Game of Thrones. We even see that in House of the Dragon. Aegon and Visenya essentially burn Dorne to shreds after that happens, after Meraxes and Rhaenys dies. But again, this is 10 years after the conquest. But again, Aegon and Visenya and Rhaenys, they never conquer it. In 161 AC, when King Daeron the Young Dragon, actually grandson to Daemon and Rhaenyra, briefly conquers it, but eventually is murdered in Dorne, and the Targaryens again lose control. Dorne would eventually join the Seven Kingdoms in a marriage pact in 189 AC under King Daeron II the Good. Yes, both Daerons had run-ins with Dorne. The first Daeron wanted to just battle them and take it over by force. That didn't work. He was murdered in Dorne. And the second Daeron the Good married into the Martell family, so they came into the fold. But yeah, Daeron, the Daeron in House of the Dragon will be one of my favorite characters, as you can tell by my YouTube channel. I shout him out. But yeah, let's just say he'll be pretty significant in a sense in House of the Dragon because two pretty famous kings were named after him. Anyways, that is the unconquest of Dorne. Never happens. Finally, guys, let's get into the last part, the final part of all of this. The coronation in Oldtown. Aegon Targaryen becomes the first king of all of Westeros. Aegon is actually welcomed happily into Oldtown when he arrives on Balerion. This time, Oldtown arguably is the most powerful house in all of Westeros, as well as having the largest city within its walls. This is because the High Septon believed that if Oldtown fought Aegon and his dragons, the whole city would be burned down. The High Septon commanded Lord Manfred Hightower, who was a very religious, like godly lord, to open the gates to him and bend the knee. The High Septon, guys, is kind of like the Pope during the period of Charlemagne and the Holy Roman Empire from like 1000 AD to like, this is real history, to like, I think roughly, I mean, it lasted till 1806 till Napoleon crushed it. But basically, my point being, in a sense, the High Septon kind of dictates to the Lord or a king, uh, like what to do even in times of war. They kind of have like ultimate power. It's a similar parallel. So Lord Hightower listens to the High Septon and does so. Seven Kingdoms was the style they used, even though we had more than seven kingdoms at this point, with the addition of the Crown Lands and the Iron Islands. The Crown Lands would actually officially be created after the conquest, but soon after. And additionally, the Rhoynar are all Dornish, so technically Aegon was not the king of them, however, just said anyways by the High Septon and stuck after this. At this point, Aegon is now officially the king of all of Westeros, of course, besides Dorne, and his rule would last 37 years. And after his rule, there would definitely be some chaos. But with that being said, guys, that is my Aegon's Conquest series. It's, again, 4 parts. You can find the 3 other videos prior to this on my channel. I appreciate you guys sticking around. And again, please like and subscribe if you can. And watch out for these upcoming videos on the First Blackfire Rebellion, as well as the Dunk and Egg series I'm going to make before HBO premieres A Night of the Seven Kingdoms in a few months on HBO. So thank you all.